Hey everyone, it's me, Ian from the Postal Hub podcast,
And Mike from Last Mile Experts.
and we are the Last Mile Prophets. And we're going to talk about a hot rumor in the sector at the moment that FedEx might take a stake in Hermes, the European parcel carrier. Mark, let's get straight into it. Hermes apparently has been looking for a strategic partner for a while. So, what do you reckon made FedEx knock on their door?
Well, they have been. There were rumors, in fact, that Geopost, i.e., DPD, were interested. And remember, this has been going on, I think, for probably almost 2 years now. I think the big issue was that Hermes wanted a partner, but I'm not sure how willing they were to give up control.
Well, I was going to ask, what presence does DPD Geopost have in Germany at the moment?
Pretty good. Well, I think that's the other challenge. The DPD is pretty strong in Hermes core markets, which would be the UK, Germany, and to a lesser degree France. And that would be a bit of a challenge in terms of anti-monopoly legislation, I would imagine.
But when you were just saying about giving up control, doesn't that sort of go hand in hand with seeking a strategic partner?
It all depends, I think. And first of all, I don't know. So it may well be that now the discussion is different. It could be that they're coming in, if at all, with a stake and with a call option. I wouldn't imagine somebody like FedEx would go in without having some long-term plan.
Well, let's talk about long-term plans because FedEx made an acquisition 5 years ago now. 5 years ago was when they first did the deal. It took a while to work through with TNT, and we're still talking about it. So what makes what if they? I'm going okay. Gross generalisation alert, everybody. If FedEx hasn't been able to really integrate and get a grip on the whole TNT situation, why would they want to have? Why would they want to take on something with Hermes?
Well, exactly, and I think that one of the key issues is exactly that. You've had one less than successful merger, and we should talk in a minute about why it was less than successful, and then you go into another one. But maybe it's worth just talking a little bit about TNT and why, in
Yeah.
my view and our view, it didn't work. I think there were a number of issues. First of all, cultural. We've seen that European companies like DHL trying to go to the States, it often doesn't work. And the DHL example is quite spectacular in terms of not working. And then we've had the Americans who've been in and out of Europe, and so far nothing really successful. You remember the UPS attempt to buy TNT, where I was a little bit on the inside because you had anti-monopoly issues and they needed to sell off some of the subsidiaries. So I know, and I think the guys are super smart, but they clearly didn't understand the way you do things in Europe. And I suspect that was the case here. Plus, Ian, interesting what your take is on this, but you've got two B2B companies with challenges in the changing world. So you make one big B2B company.
Yeah.
And I think those are the sort of reasons why it didn't work.
Well, I think we've got to throw in here as well. There was the cyber attack
The
that
virus, yeah.
really knocked them for six for a while there, and we've seen what an impact that can have. I mean, just look at what's happening with Toll in Australia. They've suffered their second one in the space of 6 months. It just can really cripple an operator when you have these sorts of IT issues, and it's telling that Toll is pumping a lot of money into its IT systems at the moment. You've talked previously about how difficult it is for a B2B operator to try and transform themselves into a B2C operator. One of the sort of reasons that people suggested that FedEx might be looking at the acquisition of Hermes is, well, according to this Reuters report, FedEx has a limited presence in the European consumer parcel delivery sector. So they've made an acquisition and they've still got a limited presence. So
I think they have a limited presence in B2C, and they have very little, in my view, infrastructure, in-house knowledge of how to deal with B2C. And in that respect, it will make sense. The only issue that I have is, is it going to be the tail wagging the dog or the other way around? Because Hermes will be smaller in terms of coverage and smaller in terms of the business overall compared to FedEx, TNT Europe. And, how is that going to work? So what we've got to remember is that this is an old family business and a German family business, fairly conservative.
because I
And
wanted
I
to
think
ask you, where does Otto fit into all of this as well?
Well, Otto's the holding company. You remember how it was. In most cases, you'd have a catalog retailer who then went into last mile in the same way that in the UK you have, used to be called Home Delivery Network, and now it's called Yodel. Same sort of story, but in this case, it's a German family-owned business, fairly conservative. Then you've got an American business. I would say maybe less conservative in terms of overall outlook, but pretty focused on their historical legacy business, which isn't B2C. You put those two together, it's going to be quite an interesting combination.
Let's speculate a little bit here. One of the things that held back the UPS takeover of TNT was anti-monopoly concerns and all of that. Any real issues here with Hermes? Are they a fairly minor player in terms of continental Europe?
Well, yeah, the two markets that I can actually see an issue with, particularly, which would be the UK and Germany, because in both of those markets, my understanding is that both players are fairly large. And that, by the way, this is a subject for our next video cast, is going to be the UK, because there are rumours that Advent, aka owner of Impost, is interested in buying part of the business in the UK, the Hermes business, which could be related exactly to that, to the fact that, Hermes knows and FedEx knows that the business cannot be sold completely, so they need to hive off a part.
Right. So we have to wrap up quickly here though. Could a tie-up with Hermes work for FedEx? Would it be a step in the right direction for them to really get established in continental Europe?
I'll give you my favourite consulting answer, which is...
It depends.
Ian, you know me so well. Exactly, it depends. I believe it depends on how they go about it, how much they've learnt from TNT, how much freedom they'll give the German company, what the deal is, who's going to be behind in the driving seat. Those are the sort of things that I think are going to be important. Do they take the right advisors?
Well, and there's also the question of culture. You talked earlier about American culture versus European culture. I think there's another question here about, and maybe we'll cover that more when we talk about Hermes in the UK and what might be happening there, which is about how a carrier is perceived by the public, especially when they're delivering B2C. And then one of your favourite topics, interactive delivery management and customer experience. So where do they want to position themselves? Are they the cheapest chips player in the last mile? Or are they going to be a quality player? Where do they want to be? And then do you have to transform an organisation to attain that level? I have a suspicion we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail when we talk about Hermes in the UK and any deal with Advent. Marek, we've got to wrap it up. So the short answer is it could be a good deal. It depends. Maybe it'll work out. Maybe it won't. Maybe the EU will take an interest in monopoly competition matters. Maybe that won't. But it could be a good deal.
And I think it's a really cool one to answer people's questions. Maybe there are people that can share a bit more information, but I think it's super exciting. And, the other side of it is UPS. This is going to really leave the other US carrier out in the cold. They were already miffed at missing TNT. Having said that, maybe it was a blessing in disguise. But, let's get the questions in. I think it's going to be really interesting.
And what's it mean for Amazon in the last mile as well? Something we haven't even mentioned in this discussion, which but looms large even in European last mile delivery because they're getting active in Germany in the last mile and in other markets in Europe. Marek Rajecki from Last Mile Experts, thanks for being part of this episode of the Last Mile Profits.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you, everyone. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed this episode of The Last Mile Profits.
Make sure you subscribe, hit the subscribe button and also the notifications bell so you get a notification every time we add a new video to this channel. Look forward to sharing more stuff with you on The Last Mile Profits.